And good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of The People Show. This is a special edition. I'm Mark Wallace, your host and facilitator of this edition of The People Show. We are going to be talking with the Commissioner of the Board of Review. Commissioner Samantha Steele is joining me now. And we're going to be talking about the operations of the Board of Review. And we're going to go into some detailed things. I told you all the last time that we had our program that we're going to be talking with the Commissioner. This is a very important office. It has gone for a long time, relatively unknown, but it has some serious concerns, and we want to see some serious reforms there. And Samantha Steele is a part of that reform that we'd like to see at that office. And we're going to talk with her and get some education for ourselves so that we could make some decisions on going forth. So let me bring into to the studio with us Commissioner Samantha Steele. Welcome to the program. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank, thank you for having me, Mark.
All right. How's your Sunday?
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's
The
a
weather
beautiful
is
day.
so much better. The rain has
Yeah.
stopped. So yeah, Sunday's great.
All right, great. Well, I want to get right into this. If you can just give us some background about you. I didn't read your dossier, which is an extensive one, so you could give our viewing audience some background about you and what you do and your role on the Board of Review.
So my name is Samantha Steele. I am a Board of Review Commissioner for the Second District. My district starts roughly around Grant Park and goes north to Lake County, Illinois. West, we have Des Plaines, Elk Grove. And so I represent that district. But extensive background in valuations. I had been a realtor, a broker in Indiana, and so I sort of ran an arts and entertainment magazine with a couple of my friends. And I was 26 years old, and one of my friends said, "No one our age is involved in local politics, and you should really think about running for county assessor." And I just sort of laughed because I was 26. And there were no Democrats in Tippecanoe County, Indiana. So that's by where Purdue is. And he convinced me to do it. And so I ran, and I thought, it'll just be fun to say, remember that time I ran for office. But I won. I was the first Democrat elected countywide in 30 years. I was a 27-year-old single mother, so, you know, not your typical candidate, not your typical politician, but I had a background in valuation. Indiana had just ruled that the way that they were assessing properties was unconstitutional. They had a cost minus depreciation approach, which disenfranchised newer homes. They weren't assessed at a lower rate that the older homes were receiving because of the depreciation aspect. And so they transferred to a market-based system, and it went into effect in 2006. And so my tenure was some of the first years of managing a market-based assessment system. And at that point, I took office. I made it my mission to learn everything there was about the valuation process. We eventually eliminated using a consultant or a contractor and brought the assessment process in-house. We implemented a market-based multiple regression system, and we transferred the software system. So it was an old mainframe. If you think of the blue screen with the green dot, they had that. And so I was a county assessor for 4 years, and then I went to work in the Indianapolis assessor's office. From there, I started my own tax consulting company. So I've worked on both sides of the table. I did that for 2 years and realized I prefer working for government agencies. And so I started a company, which I continue to run now, called the Lenore Group. And we work for assessment jurisdictions across the country. Most of our clients are in Indiana, and I do not do work in Illinois. I just felt like that was a conflict of interest, and I only work for government agencies, so I don't work for tax payers. And we do all kinds of assessment from business personal property to real commercial. I've been expert witness in multiple cases. I've settled appeals at local to state levels. And then in 2018, I was teaching a class at the International Association of Assessing Officials annual conference. And that time I met our then incoming assessor, Fritz Kagi, and his chief deputy. And I introduced myself and I said, I work in this field and I also live in Evanston. So I'm a constituent. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And I ended up coming onto Fritz's office in his transition in 2018. And I managed the commercial properties. I was the director of commercial valuations during that first try. And, during that portion, I realized that there was something significantly wrong with the way that Cook County was processing appeals. And, the assessor's office worked closely with the Board of Review, and my commissioner then, Commissioner Cabanargi, couldn't answer basic questions. And I was floored, thinking this person is in charge of the office, and he really had no background in valuation or even a little bit of a foundation. And I have multiple designations. I've sat on professional development committees, and I've taught numerous courses and valuations, everything from a GIS to extracting ongoing concern business value from commercial real estate. And so I tossed around the idea of running. I thought, I'd never run again for public office. It's tough being a Democrat and, what was a very conservative community. And so I didn't think that was the life for me. And I realized that, it's easy to complain about things, but it takes a lot to stand up and put yourself out there. And, I can't offer a lot, but I can offer my experience and I can improve the community. And so I decided to run in 21 for the Cook County Board of Review. And, it wasn't an easy task. But, I did win, and I took office in December of 2022. And it's been quite eye-opening for me. With my extensive background, I've worked in multiple jurisdictions. And at that point of coming into office, I knew right away that we needed to modernize the way that appeals in Cook County were being processed. And so I hired a data scientist. I brought on a GIS specialist, and I've set to work of implementing a very strong valuation team, which I'm proud to say that we have many individuals at the Board of Review in our district, in District 2, that have now received designations and training, in valuation. And so we work on trying to make the office as professional as possible.
All right. You have quite an extensive background, and I think what you pointed out to as having people in these positions that actually have the experience to do the work. I think going forward, the Board of Review is, it's been a rather obscure office, but I think in learning the things that we're learning, I've been in real estate 42 years as a developer, and now as a private lender, part-time developer, private lender. And until I met Fritz Kagi, I was not aware of some of the most egregious things that are going on, that were going on in the assessor's office, and now what is going on at the Board of Review, learning what has been going on at the Board of Review. And it's good to have somebody there that wants to bring real reform and professionalism, and certainly some fairness to that office. And I hope that the information that is exchanged here with you today and conversations that we hope to have in the future, that will be eye-opening to the public, that we will make the kinds of changes that we need to make as voters, so that you can have the tools to right the ship, so to speak. So why don't we get right into some of the questions that I think that are important for them to know. So could you just first tell us, what is the Board of Review?
So the Board of Review is a quasi-judicial board that only handles property appeals and exemptions. So if the assessor sets value in mass, and you can appeal at the assessor level, or you can go to the Board of Review. And so we're the last level countywide to oversee the assessment process.
So does a person have to go when they want to appeal their taxes? Is there a process that they have to go through the assessor first, and the assessor analyzes that and makes a determination, or can they go straight to the Board of Review?
They can go straight to the Board of Review. So they can do both and or kind of deal. So you can go to the assessor, and then if you're not pleased with that, then you can come on to the Board of Review, or you can just go straight to the Board of Review.
And why do we need to have the Board of Review? What's the important role of the Board of Review?
Well, the Board of Review is sort of an oversight agency for the county assessor. And so our role is to represent the taxpayers and ensure that your assessment is as accurate as possible.
Okay. And I think you stated to it, but you ran for this office. You had no intentions of running for the office, but you ran for this office. What prompted you to run for this position?
And it was just my experience with the office itself. I had in 2017, I went to an appeal outreach that was at the library in Evanston, and it was apparent that the incumbent wasn't familiar with appraisal practices and didn't have a knowledge of valuations. And then whenever I subsequently went to work in the assessor's office, my assumption there was solidified with my interactions at the Board of Review. And I was just dumbfounded that, there really is no requirement for a Board of Review commissioner. To become a commissioner, you run like any other elected office. And you don't need a background in valuations. And, you have to take one class within a year and pass one test. And I was just, floored to realize that the process wasn't more in depth, and they didn't require someone with, a background in, sorry, I have a puppy here.
That's okay. That's all right.
With a professional background in valuation. And so I ran, and we were successful. And I've just, since I've been working on improving the quality of, the staff levels, the quality of work that comes out of our office. And it's been quite challenging.
All right. So how many commissioners are there, and who do they represent on the Board of Review?
So there are 3 commissioners, individually elected. There's District 1, which is currently held by George Cardenas. District 2, District 1 is mostly the west side of Cook County. District 2, like I had said, is my district, mostly the north side of the county. And District 3, which is represented by Commissioner Larry Rogers Jr., which is mostly the south of the county.
Okay, so when you say the south of the county, does that represent the south side of Chicago, the southeast side, the southwest side, and the southern suburbs?
Yes.
Okay, and then the west side of the county, does that include the South Loop or the West Loop, the west side of Chicago?
No, so the South Loop is actually represented by District 3. Okay. It's West Chicago, Pilsen. You want to think of those neighborhoods.
Right.
He goes west up to Schaumburg, and then we border some in Jefferson.
Okay. And how many offices are up for election now? Which commission is
just
up for election?
Just District 3 is up for election now.
And that territory covers what?
That territory, it starts Streeterville in the city, South Loop, and all the way down to Indiana. So the border of Cook County, the
Okay.
south, all
All
most
right.
of the Southland.
Does it take any part of the west side at all?
A little bit. It goes far, a little bit far west.
A
Yeah,
little bit
but
far west. Okay.
yeah.
All right. So now we understand what the territories are, just for people to understand where that is and who would be voting for that particular role. So, what is the actual role of the commissioner?
Well, each commissioner is supposed to hear an appeal. So if you submit an appeal for your property, even though you may not live in my district, one of my analysts will review your assessment. And it takes two commissioners to approve an appeal to receive a reduction in value.
So, when you say one of your analysts, so you have um, skilled or professional analysts that analyze that information. Is that right? Because when you say
Um,
analyst, I'm thinking that this is a person who is an expert at this.
So you're leading me here, Mark. I can speak for my staff
Mhm.
and District Two, and I have
Okay.
my staff has, we require designation and experience training to receive that designation within a year of coming on to the office
Mhm.
in my district. I know that there are some members in my fellow, my colleagues, and their districts that have no backgrounds in valuations. Some that I question whether or not they've ever used even Excel. Um, just my interactions with them left me very disappointed and the quality of employees. It's a lot of patronage hiring in my colleagues' offices. The board review has gone through many investigations into their hiring practices, and I've tried to follow more of a professional practice in our district.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about your district, and because again, this is for educational information for us. So, when you talked about someone who presents an application for an appeal, and you use the term analyst in your office or your district, you have an analyst to review that the information that somebody or the application that they put forth, and that analyst reviews it, and then that analyst brings their opinion of that review to you to make a determination, or they make a
No,
determination.
they
How does
make
that
that.
work?
Yes, I've taken myself out of the equation. I don't want anyone to ever say that I cherry pick or select. I give strong guidelines of this is how you value a property,
Mhm.
depending on the type of property that they're evaluating. Um, and then my analysts are trained, and I have the utmost faith in their abilities to perform that valuation process.
so
And
if
so I
you're
leave that to them.
So if your analysts come back and say to you, Commissioner, we've analyzed this, we've looked at this, this is what our findings are, this does not meet the standards for reduction, or this does meet the standards for reduction, and then what happens at that point?
So it goes, they do it all within our software system, and I actually don't see their decisions before they're made. I do random samples just to make sure that people are following the rules, checks and balance.
Mhm.
But I've never asked to receive, to be given the information before they make a determination.
So once they make a determination, then what happens after they make the
Then
determination?
it goes on to another commissioner to decide, unless we were the last commissioner, the last district to review. And so if two of the three commissioners say, yeah, this deserves a reduction, then the taxpayer is notified and they get a reduction. If two of the three say no, then they're notified that their appeal was not successful. If you do not have a successful appeal at the board review, or you don't feel that the board review reduced your value to what you believe your property is worth, you have the opportunity to go on to a state level, which is called PTAB here in Illinois. Um, or it's bifurcated. So at this point, you can't do both. You can either do the circuit court or the state PTAB.
So, what is your biggest challenge at the Board of Review? What did you find to be the biggest surprise for you at the Board of Review going
The
in?
biggest surprise going in was how political the office truly is. Both of my colleagues have been very disrespectful to me. I was alarmed that there had never been, and there still to this day does not exist, an operation manual. So the staff is not, there's no guidelines for the county, all three districts to say this is what constitutes a valid appeal, or this is how you value this type of property. So that is very alarming. I've never worked in a jurisdiction that doesn't have an operational manual. And for us to be the second largest county in the country and, a metropolitan and very sophisticated community, it's alarming, and we should be alarmed. You should be alarmed as a taxpayer that this doesn't exist. I've brought this issue to my colleagues, and I have documentation from a text message where they said, by saying this, we're admitting that we are just guessing. And I'm like, essentially, you are. This is your opportunity to correct a wrong, and you aren't taking it. You aren't living up to the moment. And so that has been very disappointing to me. I had said that I brought in a data scientist. They have refused access to our software system, to my analysts, to myself. As of late, myself and my chief deputy are not even allowed access to the media email for the Board of Review. So if you yourself send an email inquiring about anything, I don't have access to that.
Well, wait a minute. If you are co-equals, if I'm understanding this, you're co-equals and you don't have someone who is in charge of you, or that you're responsible. Obviously, you're responsible to the tax buyer or the taxpayers. But if you're co-equals, how can one commissioner or the other keep information from another commissioner? How is that? How is that so?
They just do it, right? They hold the key. There's appointed positions in the office, and those individuals aren't accountable to myself. I wrote a letter to the county commissioners back in February, highlighting some serious concerns within the office, and this being one of those concerns. And my colleagues responded by saying that I was hysterical, that I was difficult to work with. It's a typical woman is not to be trusted, and she's crazy, she's hysterical. They attacked me personally rather than addressing the issues that were brought up and the professionalism in the office. 2 weeks ago, there was the county IT committee had a meeting, and all the various offices within the county give reports. And me being the chair of the Board of Review, I was presenting a report, and the chair of the board is created every year by statute. And so, last year it was District 1, which was Commissioner Cardenas, and this year is District 2, which is myself, Commissioner Steele, and next year will be the District 3. And my colleagues asked for my statements before, which I shared with them. And the slideshow and presentation that we put together to present to the IT committee about some of our accomplishments last year. And they actually wanted me to remove the fact that District 2 won an international award for Jurisdiction of the Year because of the improvements that I implemented within the office. And then I said,
your colleagues were asking you to do this?
They did. They asked, and I said no. And then they said, well, can you just say it's a Board of Review award? And I said, absolutely not. After, they refused to allow me to implement these. I had to do it despite of the obstacles that they put in place. At one point during the year, they blocked my data scientists from access to our system. Like, by virtue of doing this, they essentially prohibited me as an elected official to fulfill my oath of office. And they wanted me to say it was a board. I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. But straight faced. And then I gave my presentation, and then my colleagues asked to speak. And of course, I would never prevent another elected official from speaking. And they were very disrespectful, not just to me, but to other women commissioners, county commissioners. And it was to the point where the chair of the committee had to request them to be, to have decorum in his meeting. And, one of them completely lied. He said that I did not notify him of my my initiative of changing the way that the evidence that we're using for appeals, because I had noticed last year in March of even before that, but I noticed that they were using an outdated algorithm for the comparable properties for residential property owners. And I had sent an email to Commissioner Cardenas, highlighting, this, we should use this. It's been approved. I did it in 2009. I've done it, with other jurisdictions. Other jurisdictions do it themselves currently. And his response to me in an email was, let's start with the Latino townships. I'm sorry, but you were elected to represent the entire county. Your district is not just the Latino townships. Your district compromises so many different cultures and backgrounds and individuals. And then for him to say in a meeting that I never told him, and I just was floored. I had never been treated so poorly, and I was the only Democrat in a very conservative Republican community, and I was 27. Those people did not even treat me this poorly. And so I've tried with these guys. I've offered, my resources, my knowledge, and they just refuse to cooperate or to even, acknowledge that I had actually approached them. And instead they chose to lie, not just to me, which I've been, unfortunately used to their gaslighting over the past year, but they lied to other elected officials and to the public.
How long have you been elected to that office?
I took office the first Monday, so December 4th. Yes, December 4th, 2022.
2022. And you are, you're up for re-election when?
In 26.
26. We need to make sure that we know about that so that we can be prepared to help. So does the public have access to the Board of Review? Are there Board of Review public meetings? Does the public have access to this office?
We're required to have a public meeting once a year, which they had traditionally done. I believe that, under my leadership this year as chair, I've initiated quarterly meetings. And so we just had our meeting March 6th, this quarter's meeting. And it did not go well. And there were some concerns, it's not televised, it's not streamed. So there is no access. You have to actually come into the board to participate. There's no documentation. The meetings aren't recorded. There is a court reporter that types, what is said and submits it.
Wait a minute. The meetings are not recorded. Well, it's beginning to sound a little bit like, Fred Flintstone or something.
You're telling me. Yeah.
The meetings are not recorded. There's no record keeping minutes.
There's minutes. There's just minutes. So it's not video recorded. There's no audio recording, and there is a court reporter that takes the minutes.
Okay. How many people from the public attended that meeting, or if you know?
I believe there were 3 individuals that attended this meeting. The last one, there were some people, 3, 2 women from the League of Women Voters, And a woman, Stella Black, we just, everyone loves Stella Black. She's fantastic. She works in the property tax industry, but she's attended our meetings. So these, and the League of Women Voters actually made a mention to me that they were concerned that while the meeting is posted on our website, we don't mail out, or we didn't send out an email saying, to all these other individuals. We have email servers, list servers for all of our outreaches, that this wasn't communicated to the public at large really in a meaningful manner. It's posted on the website, but it's, in the paper. Who looks for the stuff in the paper?
Right. Well,
So
we certainly need to know, and it's only one a year. There's only one meeting a year.
it's
Or
only required.
meeting?
Yeah, it's one required meeting, but we will be having them quarterly, and I'm happy to send those dates out to you. September will be the next. I think we do a Wednesday, but it's generally that's the first Tuesday.
This is eye-opening but shocking at the same time.
And it's shocking, it's eye-opening, but it has been a going practice for this board. There has been numerous OIIG investigations about this office and the management issues. And unfortunately, the OIIG has no real authority over these individuals. And the state's attorney, they've given multiple opinions on how the office is not functioning. The FBI has done investigations. There was an individual indicted. There have been several individuals that were asked to leave because of fraud that they were committing. And it's just, this office has gone unchecked for so long. And it's alarming because this isn't just an office that, pushes papers. This is an office that handles billions of dollars in tax revenue. Our decisions affect everything in this community, from the educational opportunities of our children to your drinking water. If there aren't more transparency and more accountability within this office, we are going to see some dire situations, and it is very alarming.
Yeah, it's very alarming because of what I have learned about how money is being shifted, or that's being shifted from one community to others, or on behalf of people who are getting tax reductions that are not warranted tax deductions, and that needed revenue is coming out of the communities who need it the most.
Absolutely. Those individuals, don't have the representation. They don't have the means to file an appeal or hire an attorney. I've discussed this, and it's very alarming. So I am the only commissioner at the Board of Review that does not accept campaign contributions from tax attorneys. I don't do this because I believe that tax attorneys are evil or bad. I do this because my colleagues have created an office policy that requires businesses, if you own a business, you are required to hire an attorney. You cannot represent yourself at the Board of Review.
So they've become advocates for attorneys rather than advocates for the public.
And they don't recuse themselves from those campaign contributions. Commissioner Cardenas hired a woman to run against State Rep Teresa Ma, and she has accepted as far as I know, just one $3,500 campaign contribution while she's sitting in the office, making those appeals, settling those appeals. And my colleagues have over the years collected hundreds of thousands of dollars. In just this past year, they've both collected over $100,000 from campaign contributions from tax appeal attorneys. And
on cases that they would be hearing from those same attorneys.
On cases that they would be hearing from those same attorneys. And keep in mind, there is no rule book for how you settle appeals, right? So there's no accountability. And it stops at the voting booth, and we just need to educate the community as much as possible about this office, the importance of this office, and the importance of having the right people representing them. Because, district many of the District 2 is one of the more affluent. Those people appeal all of the time.
Mhm.
And it is because they have the resources and they know about this. And it's sort of something that they pass down, from father to son as, this is what you do when you buy a house. You appeal your taxes in Cook County. We
Mhm.
have 33% of our taxpayers appeal every year. 33%. That surpasses the nation average of 5%. It's alarming, and it's being done at such a rate that, whenever you settle these appeals, you're shifting that burden onto anyone that hasn't appealed. So it's almost, you know, in your best interest as a taxpayer to appeal, because at
Mhm.
least there's a chance, right?
Right.
If you don't appeal, then there is no chance. And unfortunately, and some of the less resource driven communities, they don't appeal because they don't know how to. It's intimidating, and it's just not something that is normal for them, and they don't feel like they have the resources to pay someone. In many cases they just don't, and those are the people that need it the most.
Right. Well, but I think that what I'm seeing the biggest abuse is with commercial property owners that
Absolutely.
get tax um, reductions that they really should not get.
That's true, and it's a matter of, these commercial properties are just generally much more expensive. And if you
Mhm.
take 5% off of that property, you're reducing our tax liability significantly, right? And so you shift the burden. An example, and I've talked about this, was that the Arlington racetrack had an appeal, and they were within their right to appeal, and they did deserve a reduction in value. However, the three commissioners, their lead analysts met. They came up with a specific value. I think it was 137 million, and I ran on being transparent. I will never not answer a reporter's call. I will never not answer a question. I'm like the worst politician because I can't deflect. I've tried. It's just not who I am. It's
Well,
against,
thank you for
just
that.
the kind of person that I am. And so I answered. I was asked. They had, the Tribune had reached out to me, and they asked, and I said yes. This decision has been made, and it is going to be 137 million. My colleagues were very upset with me for speaking to the media before we had notified the taxpayer, um, and they reduced their value to 120 24, something around that $1 million. Like, they just gave them a $10 million discount, not rooted in valuation practices, but because they were upset with me. And then on top of that, Kristen Duffy, who is the County Board of Review's general counsel, she wrote a letter saying that I had violated law. Not true. Not true at all. Maybe I did go outside of the norm, but the norm isn't acceptable anymore. People deserve to know, and they don't deserve to have it crafted. They just want the facts. And, she's supposed to represent me. Could you imagine your attorney in a courtroom saying you shouldn't have done this?
Right. Representing the other side.
No.
Um,
Well,
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. This is astonishing, but I got to stay on point here. When you wrote the letter to, was this to the Cook County Board of Commissioners? Tony
yes.
Pretwinkle being the
The
president of that board?
president and the county commissioner. So I sent
Okay,
it to
so
all
you
of
wrote
all of the
to the commissioners, and what was their response to your letter?
many are concerned, and I am not the first individual to say something's wrong here, right?
Mhm.
I'm just saying it from a different platform. I tried behind the scenes in the last year to make change. I am not an I got you kind of person. I don't like, getting in front of the camera and doing this stuff. I'm very much a behind the scenes number person. And it just is, I can't continue. It's unconscionable for me to continue to allow these things to happen. And the response has been some serious concerns. They were open to my suggestions. So in order to fix some of these concerns, first and foremost, the Board of Review needs to be 3 separate offices. The county commissioners themselves are their own office individually, and then they come together to make legislation and rule. And there is no reason that the Board of Review should be operating in the way that it does under one budget. Allowing that one budget rule gives 2 of the 3 commissioners the ability to disenfranchise another commissioner. And I've many examples of how they've utilized our budget. The attorney being one, she represents all 3 of the commissioners, and she doesn't even send me reports. Can you imagine your employee not sending you reports when you
I
ask
can't
them?
imagine it. But
And she just says it's too cumbersome. It's your freaking job.
yeah, it's their job, but it's being politicized to
Exactly.
support somebody else. So I
And
get
then
it
the
now.
other issue is, our software system is antiquated. It is cumbersome. It's not the same software system the rest of the taxing bodies in the county are on. It creates duplicated efforts. It allows them to keep a county, an elected official out of their own data. And it's
And
just not.
why hasn't it been improved or has there, obviously you have asked this, are the other commissioners asking for?
No, they don't want. I mean, Commissioner Rogers Jr. had implemented this software, the current software system that is in the office, and it's his baby, right? And he just doesn't want us to get onto the same software system. He'll make you a million excuses, but they're not valid. They're not valid excuses.
So this system's got to be 20 years old.
It's 2015 is when they implemented it.
Okay.
So
Right.
how many iPhones have you had since 2015?
Right. Exactly.
You know?
That's an eternity, right?
And yeah, I mean, we have so much more. And then the other action item I had requested is an internal audit of the Board of Review, because they need to see, people need to see for themselves how it's being operated and the mismanagement of that office.
So then it sounds like it would be coming from the Board of Commissioners, Tony Pretwinkle being the president of the board, that would be having some type of oversight over the board with the commissioners. But if that is the case, this is me saying this, not you. If that is the case, that is another layer of the problem. That's another layer of the problem, because that is another layer of protection of your colleagues. So the only way that this is going to change is that we as the voters have to make a change in order for there to be any change at the Board of Review, because Larry Rogers Jr. is insulated by Tony Pretwinkle. He's endorsed by her. He's insulated by the commissioners. Now, I'm going to be going to the commissioners and asking the commissioners why they are not doing something different.
And they have started.
What have they done?
They've agreed to meet to discuss the issues at hand. And the president, Pretwinkle, before I even took office, she initiated a taxpayer working group where all of the elected bodies, all of the different taxing bodies meet regularly to work on issues. Cook County for a long time had multiple layers. The assessor's office was run very poorly, and the Board of Review is part of that problem, and it has systematically been. And so they are working on it. I'm not saying that they have not done anything, but I guess someone standing in the house that's on fire, you're like, okay, that's not fast enough.
Exactly.
But I also have to realize that I am one office in, the second largest county.
Mhm.
And so I can't expect them to drop everything, right? And do what I need them to do.
What's the
Um,
most critical thing? What is the most critical thing that you need right now? What's the most critical thing that you need?
so the
Um,
most critical thing are those three things. Just the
okay.
budget, which can't happen until next year.
How much
And
is the budget of the Board of Review? What is the budget?
oh gosh, I think we're 14 million. I'm not sure. I'm not
Okay.
sure. Actually, this is a prime example. So the secretary of the board was appointed by George Cardenas and Larry Rogers. I spoke out against her in our December meeting, her appointment, because she facilitated locking my employee out. She failed to address my concerns that there is no office structure. So the organization chart basically didn't exist. The job descriptions don't define the roles of individuals. And so, I set upon redesigning District 2. I know that I can only work within my district, and
Mhm.
she failed to meet me to do this until after the budget had already started, until October. And so I just couldn't in good faith say you should be the secretary again, because she failed, and she's it's very clear that she works for George Cardenas. She does not work for the board as an agency. She works for George Cardenas. And our budget was approved, submitted, given to us in December. I had to go to the county budget office and ask for a copy, because she still has not given me a copy after I've requested a copy of my own budget.
Okay. We only have a few minutes, and it's going to go by fast. I know we have a hard stop at 4 o'clock. So again, tell us, what are the three things that you need or that office needs? Number one, let me say this: don't despair, don't lose hope, don't give up. We need you there. Okay,
Ugh,
the cavalry is going to come. But we need you to be there. But we certainly need you to hold on. We're going to send you some help. We're going to
thank
work
you.
we're going to work very hard to do that. So tell us, what are the three things that office needs? One, to give you
Break
and
up
the
a
office
budget,
the
break
tools.
up our budget. And,
Okay.
the county commissioners and the president are willing to do that. The president has offered the budgeting department for the county to work with us on doing that.
Mhm.
And so I don't know if that means, yes, we're going to do it, or we're willing to see what that would look like.
It
I'm
usually
not
means lip service. It usually means lip service. That's what they do in politics here. What's the second?
I have faith. I'm sorry.
I do too.
I may
But
be naive, but I have
yeah.
faith. I think that they really do want to do the right thing. And the second thing is, the software system needs to be updated. And I know I said that, an analysis of that board review operations, but we need an operational manual. We need guidance. The taxpayers deserve predictability and accountability, and that is not what's being offered to them. The residential taxpayers and the commercial. I've talked to so many commercial property owners who say, we just want to know how
Mhm.
it's decided. And right now, this office is so opaque that people don't know.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, and it has gone for decades. This has gone on for decades, and
Absolutely. And I could
you
tell you,
know,
like, Michael Madigan did not become a millionaire because he was a state rep. He
right.
became a millionaire because he owned one of the most profitable appeal law firms in the country. Right.
Wow.
And
Yes.
so, we just have to, as a society and as a community, we have to say, why is this being allowed? And it's because people don't speak up. And if, I'm just as guilty if I don't say something. And so I feel like I have to.
Yeah. Well, we can't speak up if we don't know. We're just learning about this. We're just learning about this. And I'm so grateful to Fritz Keiki, is who makes himself available, because I'm like the notorious pest that I will knock on your door and until you answer, or I'll catch you in the hallway. But Fritz Keiki has been that assessor who has been very available. You know, he's busy, but he's been available to answer these questions and to provide this information. If that were not the case, we would never get this kind of information from his predecessor. So what is the relationship between the Board of Review and the assessor's office? Because there are some people who think that somehow the assessor is the king over the Board of Review. So what's the relationship between those two agencies?
And that's not the case. I mean, that's a misassumption. The Board of Review, looking through legislation, had and should be an oversight agency for the assessor. That we make sure that your values are accurate as possible if you feel that they aren't. And the Board of Review and the assessor's office has under under this administration have had a very tumultuous relationship, which should not be the case. We are all elected to represent the county and to represent the taxpayer, and that lack of professionalism that is extended to the two offices is very unfortunate. But it is improving.
But shouldn't there be some type of cohesiveness and collaboration between the two agencies?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I have strong relationships with individuals within the assessor's office. I worked there, and many of the individuals that I worked with, we became friends, right? You spend 40 hours a week with somebody, you develop relationships, and I know that their heart is in the right place. Now, maybe I don't agree with, and I don't agree with everything, the assessor's office does. And nor should I, and nor will anyone, right? We will not always have the same opinion. But I think that there's a way of managing that professionally versus what has happened. And I don't know what, the beef is between Commissioner Rogers Jr. and Assessor Kagi, but
I know what it is.
They very much dislike each other.
Well, I know what it is. I know exactly what it is. And if you care to hear it,
I would love to hear it.
Okay, I'll tell you exactly what it is. What it is that Larry Rogers Jr. has made a lot of money based on the relationships that he has with tax appeal attorneys that have brought cases before the Board of Review. The assessor knows that there is fundamental inequities there that he does not support, and Larry Rogers, the light is being turned on that, and Larry Rogers Jr. doesn't want that to happen because Fritz Kagi is not playing ball like the typical politician is supposed to within this agency. And we now know, some of us in the public knows what Larry Rogers Jr. has been up to. And Larry Rogers Jr. has been duping our communities for a long time, sort of smiling in our face with a frown in his heart in terms of giving these, doing these so-called town hall, public awareness type meetings and showing people how to appeal their taxes. Well, he shows people how to appeal their taxes, but he goes back and he gives these big multi-million-dollar tax cut to people who don't deserve it, and then saddle it on the very people that he claims that he is helping. That's what Larry Rogers Jr.'s problem is. Larry Rogers Jr., I'm sure right now, is somebody who I once thought was a pretty decent person years ago. I can't get a return of phone call from him now, and he probably doesn't like me, and that's okay. I'm not going to lose any sleep because we don't like what we are discovering that he has been behind. That's why there's that tension between the two, because there shouldn't be. They should both be people who are trying to do what is best for the entire county and for the taxpayers, and making it a very fair process. It is clear to me that that's not what's happening. What's happening with Larry Rogers Jr. Fritz Kagi doesn't agree with it, so of course there's going to be that tension, and we just need to understand that that's what this is. Now, there are going to be others who are going to try to say that Fritz Kagi wants to control the board of review.
I've
That's
heard that. And
yeah.
I was, when I was running, people said, oh, well, Fritz put her up to it. Fritz did not put me up to it.
Mhm.
I was in property valuations before Fritz even knew what property value, this was on his radar.
Mhm.
And I have, a longstanding background. I decided to run because I saw the issues in this county. And, I had, this is something that I could offer to my community, my knowledge, my education, and my experience. And so that's why I ran. I don't agree with the way, the assessor values commercial properties. In the property assessment world, when you value commercial properties using the income approach, you're supposed to load the cap rate. By
Mhm.
not loading that cap rate, you shift the expense of your property taxes back into the income. And so I don't agree with it. And people were like, she's going to be a Fritz person. She's going to settle with these. I am a data and I'm a numbers person. I am a valuation professional. Do I believe that Fritz has good intentions and changing a broken system? Yes. Yes, I do.
Well, I think that there has to be an openness and willingness to have parties to sit down to come up with, even where we may not agree, but if we have the openness and willingness to sit down and let's discuss and let's look at the different approaches and why one works and why the other doesn't, or why one disadvantages the other. But there has to be a willingness to have the conversation, right?
And Mark,
Um,
this could all be rectified if we had one statewide valuation manual. You look at to our neighbor in Indiana, and this is the only thing I'll say that Indiana does well,
mhm.
is that they have a statewide assessment manual. When you buy property in Indiana, you can look on their website, on the state's website, and see this is how property is valued. It encompasses, I mean, it's a massive book, and it takes, multiple weeks of training for an analyst or anyone that sets value to learn the process. And we don't have that as a state. And I don't believe that's by accident. I believe that that is fundamentally how our former Speaker of the House, Michael Madigan, became wealthy. It's easier to operate in an opaque system and benefit from an opaque system than it is to operate and personally benefit from a system that is crystal clear. There is no confusion. This is exactly how you value the property and all of the steps. It's
All right.
very complicated, but fix it by a statewide manual.
Well, we have to do that. So a statewide manual is what we have to advocate for. And so that has to come from the General Assembly. And so we have to have somebody at the General Assembly, a senator and a representative or somebody to sponsor this. And we have to advocate for it, and we have to make it happen. We have to make it happen.
Yeah,
But I
and I
think
believe
that
there are state reps and senators that are very much interested in ensuring that we fix this system. And they know, and I think this is a great opportunity for Speaker Welch to move that forward. And I do, I'm a very big fan of Speaker Welch, and I think that this is something that could be a lasting legacy for his administration.
Okay. Well, listen, I'm going to be calling on you and to certainly to work with you. But first, we need to do first things first and make sure that we're successful on our side to help you with bringing some changing the administration in your office so that we could work towards improving the system. I want to thank you very much. We've been talking for the last hour with Commissioner Samantha Steele. She represents you're in the second?
I'm the second.
In the second district of the Cook County Board of Review, and she has helped us a lot. We're going to be asking you to come back to help us, and hopefully after the election, we'll have some good news and a little more help to move this forward. Thank you very much for being with us on this Sunday afternoon. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the work you do.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll be talking to you again. Take care.
Bye.
All right, folks. Well, listen, that's going to do it for this edition of the People Show. We certainly thank Commissioner Samantha Steele for coming on us. But listen, I want to tell you this. We have work to do, and we, as the voters, have to make sure that we go to the polls. We're going to have to go to the polls, and we are going to have to vote, vote, vote. The Board of Review is out of control. There is no oversight there. It is almost run like a kamikaze type of agency, but you and I are paying and footing an enormous bill, and it is costing our communities hundreds of millions of dollars for a preferential few. So we can't be emotional about a personality. I think we have found out that Larry Rogers Jr. has done a very good job at giving us, a friendly smile, but has been doing a real disservice to our communities. The facts bear it out. And we have to make sure that we change this. And then we have to call on the Cook County Board to have some oversight into place where there is an actual operations standard by which that agency operates. It should not be left to itself to self-govern and self-supervise itself with no transparency whatsoever. One meeting a year for the public seems to be inadequate. We need to change that. But we have to change the makeup of the Board of Review in order for these types of policies to be advanced. Because if we put Larisha Tucker, who is the person who we have a great opportunity to put on the Board of Review to change the administration, it's time for change. Larry Rogers Jr. has been there for 20 years. He's running for a sixth term to do disservice to our communities. We cannot afford it. We can't afford it. And we've got to do our part. So I am looking to you to make sure that you talk to the people that you know, your neighbors, to see what is happening. The information that I have been able to learn and discover from getting it from foyers and then getting the information through articles. There have been articles that have been written. We're going to continue this conversation because it's important. Tomorrow, I'm going to be speaking with the clerk or the retired clerk of the county who put policies in place. We're going to be talking with him, David Orr, tomorrow at, I think it is 2:30. I have a podcast that I'll be doing with him. So make sure that you reach out, you talk to your friends, tell them to watch the podcast. We need to learn as much as possible. And I want to make sure that we put this information out so that you know what's going on, so that you know that you can go and get other people to go to the polls and to support Larisha Tucker for the commissioner of the 3rd District. The 3rd District is where we live, mainly on the south side of Chicago, some parts of the west side, all the way to Indiana. All of our, those of us who own homes in that area, we are subsidizing the taxes for wealthy property owners that people like Michael Madigan, Ed Burke, and other tax appeal attorneys are paying thousands of dollars into the campaign funds of Larry Rogers Jr. and George Cardenas to vote in favor of their appeals so that their clients can get millions and millions of dollars of tax cuts that you pick up the bill for, and they make huge retainers and fees from the taxes that they save for their clients. For example, Larry Rogers Jr. gave a $29 million tax reduction to the Trump Tower. A $29 million tax reduction. A $29 million tax reduction equates to a $7 million fee to the tax appeal attorney that wins that case on behalf of them. And that tax appeal attorney pays money to Larry Rogers Jr. and George Cardenas' campaign so that they can continue to vote in favor of their tax appeals. And while they're making tons of money, you and I and others are footing that bill. The only way that we're going to stop that is that we have to make sure that we elect Larisha Tucker. So if you don't know, look at your ballot and make sure that you support Larisha Tucker for Cook County Board of Review. We've got to replace Larry Rogers Jr. As a matter of fact, she's an assessor. She has the background and the know-how how to analyze tax appeals. Larry Rogers Jr. is a personal injury attorney. He knows little to nothing about real estate whatsoever, nor does he have the expertise at analyzing these tax appeals. He's just there to give a yes vote for the people who funds his campaign. All right, that's going to do it for us for now. Make sure that you join me tomorrow. Tomorrow at 2:30, we'll be right back here for another edition of the People Show about this issue with the retired Cook County Clerk, David Orr. And then, of course, I'll be back tomorrow night with our regular program at 7 o'clock for the Monday night edition of of the People Show with Mark Wallace and Charles Thomas. Right here, we'll be on Intellectual Radio, Facebook, YouTube, and X, and of course, Instagram. Thanks so much. We will see you tomorrow. Have a good evening.